Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to take a look at the Sun in Pisces making a trine to Mars in Cancer. The reason that this is not just your average trine is because when this trine occurs, when the Sun trines a superior planet within its synodic cycle with that planet, it really is an indicator that the change of direction is taking place for the planet, whether that's recently turning retrograde, recently turning direct. And so there's a kind of secret alchemical meaning to that trine in particular that most people don't know about. If you watched my channel somewhat recently, I did a breakdown of Venus's retrograde cycle. I'm going to be doing something like that today in the way that we take a look at this trine and include it in an overall understanding of Mars's retrogradation cycle so that you can understand why this trine is so significant and work with it not only now, but in the future when the trine recurs, because it will again, and I'll kind of map all of that out for you today. And then I'll give you 5 solid things to watch for on a more mundane level. So this will be good for you if you want to learn something a little technical about Mars's cycle. Also, if you just want to know what the Mars Sun trine is all about tomorrow. All right, that's it. So before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Share your comments. If you got a story to share anytime on the channel, use the hashtag grabbed. Tell us the name of the transit. Tell us your story. Be concise. Or send it to us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. We may include it in one of our monthly videos or a storytelling episode that I do here and there. It's always good to hear from you guys. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com, where you can learn more about my readings, courses. I'll tell you a little bit about some of the things you can find over there right now. You go to nightlightastrology.com. Tonight, I have a new webinar. My monthly webinar for the month of March is taking place this evening. It is on the 3rd house, which is called the Mysterious Temple of the Moon. It's just called the Temple of the Moon, but mysterious is fun. So we're going to be talking about why this house was called Goddess, what it has to do with the moon, and how you can work with and better understand this very nebulous and frequently misunderstood house. When we say, oh, it's siblings or short journeys or the local environment or elementary education, we are not even close to the real heart of what this temple is all about. So we are going to be taking an in-depth look at the 3rd house in this webinar tonight. So that's from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. If you can't attend live, of course, you get the recording so you can attend later. Go under the events page and go to in-person events. This weekend, we are hosting a spring equinox gathering in Minneapolis. So if you are local and would like to join us, it is at the Grapevine Collective at New City Center from 6 to 8:30 p.m. this Saturday night. We're going to move and meditate and take in the meaning of the spring equinox together, kind of meditate on that, set some new intentions. Gathering community. It's free to join. Just RSVP and let us know you're coming so we can bring enough herbal tea and cookies. Also, if you go on the events page and click on speaker series, you're going to notice that in the month of March, the 15th, 16th, and 23rd, we have our next spring speaker series. These are all free. They're made possible through the Kickstarter, as are our live events and lots of other things that we do. So check out these speaker series. They're free to attend. You get the recording again if you can't attend later. And then, by the way, go to book a reading. Check out need-based astrology readings. These are our tiered pricings. We have our course directors, some of our tutors, and talented alumni from our programs at different pricings so that astrology readings are accessible for people coming from different, financial needs. So I hope that you will take advantage of that. We have great readers on staff. If you want a reading to look at any of the things we talk about on the channel, you can always reach out over there and schedule something. All right. On that note, let us now take a look at the real-time clock. We will be getting pretty shortly here. We're going to be getting into promotion for the next year 1 program that begins in June. Horary begins in June. Next year 2 program begins in June. My wife's herbal apprenticeship program begins pretty soon here. So lots of new courses coming up in the spring to tell you guys about pretty soon. But let's look at this. So today is, sorry, let me back this. Here we go. So Thursday, March 6th, I got it right. You can see the sun is at 16 Pisces, and it is moving into a trine with Mars at 17 Cancer. So let's move this forward one day. Sorry if I can talk. There we go. We'll see that the sun moves on to that 17th degree tomorrow. And then if I take this hour by hour, although the trine is sort of well underway, it's going to be late in the evening that these two planets get together. This is like around 11 p.m. or so. Central time, so might even be early morning depending on where you're at. But anyhow, this trine comes through tomorrow, March 7th. You could be experiencing it today, March 6th. You might have been experiencing it yesterday because we give it about a 3-degree orb. So put it into even like, let's just give it a little 3-degree range here. We'll say Tuesday, March 4th of this week. You might have started to feel what we're going to talk about today, peaking tomorrow into Saturday, and really giving it 3 degrees of separation. It'll come through all the way until about early next week. Let's say Tuesday, the 11th, 12th, something like that. So this is a trine that is extra significant. We're going to talk about the significations of a Mars-Sun trine. Let me just change something here. Realize there's a typo in one of my notes. Okay, there we go. So we're going to talk about the Mars-Sun trine in terms of just things you can watch for in the next couple of days. But I want to take a moment now to explain why this is not just your average trine. And this is the case, this would be the case for any superior planet. So we're going to use Mars as an example here, but this would apply to Jupiter and Saturn as well in their synodic cycles with the sun. Those are the superior planets. Superior just means they're above the sun in the Chaldean order, means they move slower than the sun. The sun is the one typically making the aspect with them. It's applying to them because it moves faster, in other words. So the reason that this is a big deal is, let's go back to their conjunction. So the conjunction between these two planets, here we go. We're going to take this back just a little bit. And a Mars, Mars retrogrades are about every 2 years. Let's go back here. Okay, so here you can see this is November of 2023. Mars conjoined the sun. At this moment, I'm going to give you just a quick breakdown. I won't go so in depth as I did with the Venus retrograde video because I have more to get through today, but this is the moment at which Mars is reborn. This is the conjunction with the sun. Now, when this conjunction with the sun occurs, the sun, of course, in Mars is in direct motion. The sun is moving faster than Mars, so it kind of eclipses Mars. Remember what we said about the sun in some recent videos we've talked about, with the sun representing that which is the archetypal ideal. When the early mystical schools that practiced astrology were thinking about the sun, they were thinking about the realm of the archetypes themselves, like the formational thoughts in the mind of God or the universe. They are informing everything. It's like natural archetypal laws of energy that are at play behind everything. Well, when a planet conjoins the sun, the archetypal ideal, or you might say the agenda or the direction or the image that it will follow as its cycle unfolds, is being deeply impressed upon it at the time of the conjunction. So go back to the fall of 23. What were you doing? And it will be something around the topics of Mars too. Mars is going to carry images impressed upon it by the sun, but how, where, when? Well, that will be rooted in what the sun, what Mars is by its own nature. So you think of the willpower, courage, determination, also things like meaningful conflict, individuation. All of the Mars themes get reset around this time. Now, if we carry this cycle forward, the sun is going to move in front of Mars because it moves faster. The two are going to continually separate as Mars appears in the morning star position, bringing its new agenda to bear on the world. Now, here we are, and we reach this very important point right about here. You will notice that this was November of 2024, that the sun trined Mars. Now, that trine can happen. It doesn't have to be an exact degree-based trine. It's right around the time of the trine, right before it, right after it. By whole sign, you can look, and that's often a good indication that when that whole sign trine occurs, meaning they're both in fire signs here, and there's about to be a degree-based trine. It is always around that time that Mars, in this case, or Jupiter or Saturn, the other superior planets, the traditional superior planets, will turn retrograde. After the conjunction, the trine signals the change of direction. So here, what we are essentially doing is saying this is an inflection point where the sun is now reinforming Mars of a new direction. The trine is like the sun sending a little telegraph to Mars saying, good work, you've carried forth everything we talked about at our last meeting. Now we're going to change directions, and there is going to be like you're going to go into a space where things that have been carried in a certain direction reach their karmic completion, and the fruits are going to be delivered, which is a kind of culminating point. And then there's also a releasing or a burning off, and then a redirection that will occur. So this starts taking place at the station retrograde. Now you'll notice that as the sun made this trine in late November, that right after the trine occurs, Mars stops moving, it stations, and it turns retrograde. So there's Mars retrograde now. So during this time, now Mars is having an opportunity to revise and edit. And there's just like we talked about with Venus retrograde, the initial retrograde can flip things on their head because it's a culmination of karma followed by a great burning off or releasing of karma. That can mean a lot of different things and look a lot of different ways, depending on what whole sign house it lands in and, kind of what season of life you're in. This will look very different for each individual, but it follows a recognizable pattern. Then we keep moving, and we're going to see that then there comes this really important moment, which is the opposition. It's a really funny moment because in many ways, this is like the Kazemi combustion of the retrograde of Venus or Mercury, where there's a real hard moment of death, deterioration, breakdown, letting go, releasing. And this is often felt most acutely while that retrograde planet is opposing the sun. In this case, the superior planets, it would be Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn. But here we have Mars opposing the sun. This was mid-January. And actually, let me just get the exact date here. It would have been just about a couple days earlier. So the exact opposition would have been about January 15th. And that is often an acute moment within the retrograde cycle where you can feel the fruit of the cycle sort of completely falling apart. It's the karma of where Mars was is in the midst of the most kind of slow, steady burning up of the karma. Often the distinction between the initial turn retrograde and this moment is that the initial turn retrograde sort of announces the culmination of karma and can quickly flip things on its head. It's a little Uranian in that sense. Whereas this point in the cycle is more like a slow, heavy, steady burn of the kind of fully releasing karma. Now, this is important because what comes after this is then it's like a slow period where that kind of peak moment of the cycle, the sort of full moon of the cycle takes place. Mars is going to slow down in the sky gradually after that. And notice, this is where the trine takes place. Now we're in a space where the sun is in the whole sign trine with Mars, and this is about February 18th, just recently. Now notice that as the exact degree-based trine approaches, Mars stations and turns direct. This is really important because it's another inflection point. At this moment, now Mars has sort of completed the burn, right? The complete releasing and letting go of the previous arc that Mars was on has now been accomplished. And Mars is now ready to metaphorically rise from the dead. And the trine, therefore, represents the change of direction. And the exact moment of the trine, which is what we are at right now, thus represents the new image that Mars is going to be given. So this new image that Mars is given is now being carried forward. And then what happens is we're going to take this forward. We're going to see that Mars carries that image, and it's gradually turning so that we'll see it as an evening star. And that image is carried forth for quite some time. And we're not going to see another full death and rebirth of Mars and the setting of an entirely new cycle until January of 2026, when the sun conjoins Mars again. So between now and January, we are, in other words, being given a new Mars transmission. And that transmission is now going to gradually start building momentum and development. And it's a sort of reborn Mars. But what we don't realize is how important that trine is. So go back to the initial point I'm trying to make by showing you all of this. It's that, yes, Mars has changed directions. That's great. But the change of direction is a symptom of the trine, and the trine is the most important part. So the trine between the Sun and Mars is now just happening, which means even though Mars has already turned direct, and maybe you've noticed some change of the weather karmically or psychically, maybe you've noticed that Mars has changed direct, and maybe you've even been feeling better about it or whatever. It is really not until this trine occurs that we start to feel like, oh, now there's a new vision, there's a new direction, there's a new image, there's a new archetypal ideal or direction for my life within the bound of Mars, so to speak, that is going to start playing out. And this is when we typically start to feel born again with respect to Mars's transit. This is when we typically start to feel like we're turning the page, a new chapter is beginning, there's a kind of refresh, reset, and a renewal or a regenerative energy that typically, especially for a debilitated Mars cycle that's been quite difficult for a lot of us, is going to be where we start feeling like things are looking up. Isn't it amazing that people frequently say that happens when Mars stations direct, when actually that station direct, cycle by cycle, will look very different because its actual moment has to do with the trine to the Sun. So again, I hope that this is educational, because every time you look at the Mars retrograde cycle and someone says Mars is stationing to turn retrograde or it's stationing to turn direct, you want to pay attention to the trine from the Sun, because those are critical moments where the change of direction, the culmination and the burn down, or the regeneration, the rebirthing and the renewal are taking place. And also you know now that when the Sun opposes Mars in the midst of the cycle, that is one of the most acute moments where the previous path of Mars is sort of fully releasing and burning off. And you can also differentiate it from the retrograde, where the initial retrograde is often about the culmination or peak of a previous karma and the sudden change of events that starts undoing it, which can feel a little Uranian, as opposed to, say, the Sun opposite Mars in the middle of the cycle that feels like a sort of chronic, slow, steady burn off. They're different feelings, and it's nice to know how each different part of the cycle goes. So all of that being said, I hope you found that educational. Here are 5 things to watch for. And to me, these are very basic things that you have to read in relation to Mars. So, willpower, direction, strength, clarity, momentum, action in the world, and courage, things that we have to face, various conflicts that we have, perseverance, determination, effort that we're making, where we are at battle with something. Like, I consider, for example, myself, every time I go to the gym every single day, right? I kind of go to battle with myself. It's in a fun way. It's like a sport, So in what arenas of your life are you pushing yourself? Are you, kind of fighting inner demons, but maybe hopefully in a fun way, or but where is the challenge? That's a good way of putting it. Where is the challenge that you're facing, and what direction, what challenges, goals, and what things are you trying to accomplish through determination, hard work? Remember, the 6th house was called the joy of Mars. So like, where is the effort? Where's the sacrifice? Where's the perseverance? Think about how Mars is directing or redirecting that part of your life. Anything to do with sports, athletics, physical exercise, entrepreneurial endeavors, risk-taking, starting new things, inceptions, the cultivation of an individual sense of strength, all of these Marsy things have been going through a cyclical change, a turnover. So we can go back to November of 2023 to think about when it all started. I think it is, for me, I can trace those things out very, very clearly. It's actually pretty incredible to track them out. Hold on just a second. Let me just make sure I have that. Did I have that? Was it November 23? Because now I'm like forgetting. I think it was November of 23. Let me go back. That these 2 planets. Yeah, was that? No. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I want to make sure that I had that right for you guys. Yeah, so the Sun conjoined Mars it was middle of November 2023. That would be the beginning of the cycle. And it is worth looking back at where you've been since then with respect to all of these Mars equalities. When was the Mars retrograde in Gemini? Was that in, I'm trying to remember when we had that Mars retrograde in Gemini. When was that? Because that was the last retrograde cycle. Yeah. Okay, so that was in 2022. So if you remember, you can also go back and kind of compare notes with your last retrograde cycle. This is something that might be fun to do as well. I'm sorry, I'll get on to my points here in a second. So if you go back, let's see here. Yeah, so Mars retrograde changed, Mars turned retrograde, excuse me, right around, would have been, turned retrograde in late October, just after the sun had trined Mars in, would have been earlier in October. So the trine to Mars happened like mid to late October 2022. And then here, I'll show you on the screen. It's kind of, it is worth it, in my opinion, if you're someone who likes to track this stuff, to take notice. So here is, we go back. So Mars trines the sun right around October 16th, 2022. And then the retrograde of Mars took place in November of 2022. So let me give you a comparable trine that you could go back and track. If we take Mars forward through its opposition, that would be in December. That opposition occurred in December, and that would have been the peak of the burn off of the last Mars cycle, right? Now, the trine that came as Mars turned direct, which is parallel to the kind of trine we're in right now, this would have occurred. See, Mars turned direct right before the trine. So it was about like 18 degrees prior to the trine, and it turned direct on January 12th of 2023. And then Mars actually made the trine right here. This is about the end of January 2023, January 29th of 2023. So you could look back on that last cycle and notice parallels. If the only thing is that the tracking of that cycle is not going to be easy for you if you don't have a pretty good memory or some way of tracking what you were doing and thinking and feeling around that time. Sometimes you can look back through emails or pictures in your phone or text messages or whatever to track. But yeah, anyway, here are 5 things to watch for given the Mars Sun trine that's happening right now. One is simple: momentum. If a new direction is clarifying itself for you with respect to Mars, you may notice in the coming days and in the coming weeks that there is a building momentum, meaning that something is gaining traction and starting to move forward. A feeling of being in direct motion can literally just be a feeling that whereas you were having trouble getting traction or moving something along, now it's gaining momentum and starting to move along easily. Number 2 is direction and clarity. With respect to all of the Mars signatures that we talked about, you may be experiencing a clear sense of direction or a clear understanding that is mobilizing or that leads to decisive actions being taken. So with Mars turning direct, there's usually a feeling of moving forward with clarity, moving forward with a clear sense of direction and purpose. Number 3, because of the trine, would be that support, allies, and resources are becoming available to you that also help build momentum, clarify the direction or purpose that you have, or help you start taking decisive actions on behalf of a new direction or new ambition or new sense of purpose. Number 4 would be emergence from the muck. Look, if you've just been mired down and just sort of bogged down with Mars in Cancer, which I'm sure a lot of people have, because it's a sticky, vulnerable, and it's a place that requires a lot of attention and care and can be regressive at times. I've talked to a lot of people, heard a lot of your stories on the channel. A lot of people dealt with family stuff, for example. Never easy. It's a very vulnerable place. Or self-care. It's a very Mars and Cancer kind of thing. But if you have felt mired down, if you've felt like you've been in a bog, even some people like my wife, Cancer rising, she and the kids have traded sicknesses. The kids, build their immune systems that when they're in school, they come back with something all the time. So that Mars direct period and then the trine to the sun can start to feel like you're gaining health back or clarity. You're getting out of the bog of eternal winter colds. Number 5, so just watch for emergence from the muck. And number 5 would be executive energy, willpower, starting to give you, also in a water sign, give you an emotional sense of optimism. Like a combination of willpower, decision-making, strong actions, and emotional clarity, emotional charisma, or an emotional feeling of I'm being lifted. I'm coming out of something that maybe has been more complicated or weighty, or there's been a heaviness, and you can start to feel that lifting as willpower and executive energy drives you through with more like almost like an emotional optimism. That's the way that I would describe it. So watch for any of these things happening right now. But even on a deeper level, like on a sort of alchemical level, think about the sun trining Mars as clarifying the new direction that Mars will take and be unfolding in our lives all the way until January of 2026, when the synodic cycle resets and an entirely new cycle is born. So there's these little way stations through the cycle where a new direction is being given, the fruit is being realized, the cycle is being released, a new direction is being clarified, that new direction is being taken, then eventually it dies, is released, and around we go. But these moments are important because the sun is like the spiritual direction. If we listen closely to the way that Mars is being redirected right now, we should be getting a clear sense of spiritual direction and purpose that is emerging. New ideals for how our willpower should be used or how action should be directed is coming through right now. So study that carefully. And then you may notice, in addition, momentum, direction, clarity, support, allies, resources, other things sort of pouring through that can also just kind of alleviate stress that's been there with the cycle. What's going to be really interesting is that Jupiter will enter the sign of Cancer in June, coming through the place where Mars was retrograde and offering almost like a kind of salve, a healing if there's been some wounds, So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well. But that is it for today. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you're having a good day. I hope it wasn't too technical. But I think there's value in studying these cycles a little bit more in depth. So anyway, we'll leave it there. Hope you're having a good one. Bye.